9 signs you are God's preferred chosen one. Every chosen one must watch this. There are ordinary people, and then there are those who carry a spiritual weight, a different sensitivity, a quiet strength that no one can fully explain, but everyone can feel. These are people who, from a very young age, sensed that life was heavier for them. The challenges came early, the lessons came fast, the loneliness came often. They tried to fit into the world, to move at the same pace as others, to want the same things, but something always felt off. If this resonates deeply with you, it is not because you are weak. It is because you are chosen. Being God's preferred chosen one is not about being perfect, popular, or privileged. It is about being prepared. Chosen ones are shaped through pressure, refined through loss, and strengthened through isolation. Below are 9 powerful signs that reveal whether you are walking this rare and sacred path. 1. You faced unusual hardship early in life. Most chosen ones do not have easy childhoods. While others were protected, you were tested. You may have faced emotional neglect, family conflict, financial struggle, betrayal, or responsibilities far beyond your age. This wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Early hardship forces depth. It strips illusions away and builds spiritual endurance. God often allows His chosen ones to experience life's storms early so they develop wisdom, compassion, and inner strength long before others even realize they need it. If you often felt like you grew up too fast, this is one of the clearest signs of chosenness. 2. You never fully fit in, no matter how hard you tried. You tried to blend in. You mirrored behaviors. You followed trends. You adjusted your personality. And yet, you always felt different. Chosen ones are not designed to conform. Their spirit carries a frequency that doesn't align with shallow environments, empty conversations, or false connections. This often leads to feelings of being misunderstood, overlooked, or even rejected. But this difference is intentional. God does not choose replicas. He chooses originals. Your discomfort in certain spaces is not social failure, it is spiritual guidance telling you where you do not belong. 3. You are highly sensitive to energy and atmospheres. You don't just hear words, you feel intentions. You can walk into a room and instantly sense tension, dishonesty, sadness, or peace. Loud environments drain you. Fake smiles exhaust you. Silence, solitude, and nature restore you. This heightened sensitivity is not weakness. It is discernment. Chosen ones are spiritually tuned. They perceive beyond the surface. This makes them powerful healers, leaders, and guides, but only after they learn to protect their energy. God gives this sensitivity so you can see what others miss and feel what others ignore. 4. You experience periods of deep isolation. At some point, people fall away. Friends disappear. Relationships end. Even family may feel distant. These seasons of isolation can be painful, confusing, and lonely. But isolation is not abandonment, it is alignment. God often separates His chosen ones so they can hear His voice clearly, unpolluted by outside noise. In solitude, your identity strengthens. Your intuition sharpens. Your purpose becomes clearer. If you've gone through long periods where it felt like you were walking alone, understand this: God was building you privately before using you publicly. 5. You are strong, but often feel tired of being strong. People lean on you. They come to you for advice, comfort, clarity, and stability. You are the one who holds things together, even when you are quietly falling apart inside. Chosen ones are pillars for others, but pillars are not often supported. You may feel exhausted from carrying emotional weight that was never meant to be yours. Yet despite this fatigue, you keep going. Not because it's easy, but because something within you refuses to give up. That quiet resilience is one of the strongest signs of divine favor. 6. You are triggered by injustice and hypocrisy. You cannot tolerate cruelty, manipulation, or false authority. Lies bother you deeply. Abuse of power angers your soul. When something is wrong, you feel it viscerally. This isn't emotional reactivity, it's moral clarity. Chosen ones carry a strong inner compass. God places a deep sense of justice within them because they are meant to stand for truth, even when it's uncomfortable or unpopular. If you've always felt compelled to speak up, protect the vulnerable, or challenge what doesn't feel right, it's because truth lives loudly inside you. 7. Your life goes through repeated death and rebirth cycles. Just when things seem stable, everything collapses. Careers shift, relationships end, beliefs shatter. You rebuild, only to be broken again later. This pattern can feel cruel, but it is purposeful. Chosen ones are continually refined. Each breakdown strips away ego, attachment, and illusion, making room for a stronger, wiser version of you. God does not allow stagnation in those He has marked. Every ending in your life has been preparing you for a higher beginning. 8. You feel a deep, unexplainable calling. Even if you can't put it into words, you know you are here for more. Not necessarily fame or wealth, but meaning, impact, service, truth. This calling doesn't leave you, even when you try to ignore it. It whispers in quiet moments. It stirs your soul when you see suffering. It pulls you toward growth, even when growth hurts. Chosen ones are restless until they align with their purpose. If you've always felt that your life must stand for something greater, it's because God placed that mission inside you before you were born. 9. The more you grow, the more resistance you face. As you evolve, people misunderstand you. Some criticize you, others envy you, a few even try to sabotage you. This resistance is not coincidence, it is confirmation. Light exposes darkness. Growth threatens comfort. Truth disrupts illusion. When you step into alignment, opposition increases, not to stop you, but to strengthen you. God allows resistance to sharpen His chosen ones, not destroy them. If your growth has been met with pushback, know this: you are moving in the right direction. Final message to the chosen one. Being God's preferred chosen one is not a reward, it is a responsibility. You were not selected for an easy life, but for a meaningful one. Your wounds carry wisdom, your struggles carry purpose, your sensitivity carries power. If these signs resonate deeply, it is because your soul recognizes the truth. Do not shrink to make others comfortable. Do not abandon your depth to fit shallow spaces. Do not doubt your path just because it is lonely. God does not choose many, but when He does, He chooses intentionally. And if you are here, feeling seen by these words, then this message was never random. It was meant for you. There will come a moment in your life when everything you have survived finally begins to make sense. Not all at once, and not in a way that erases the pain, but in a way that gives it meaning. Chosen ones do not receive clarity early. They receive endurance first. Understanding comes later, after the soul has been strengthened enough to carry it without breaking. You may have wondered why you had to be the strong one. Why you were expected to understand when no one explained. Why you were required to forgive when no one apologized. Why your heart had to stretch so far just to survive ordinary days. These questions are not signs of doubt. They are signs of awakening. Chosen ones often awaken slowly, layer by layer. At first, they only feel different. Then they feel isolated. Later, they feel burdened. Eventually, they feel called. One of the quiet truths about being chosen is that your inner world is far richer than your outer life for a long time. While others are busy building identities around achievements, appearances, or approval, you are building something invisible: depth, emotional intelligence, spiritual resilience, inner authority. These qualities cannot be rushed, and they cannot be faked. You may have noticed that your life has forced you to learn emotional self-reliance early. When you were hurting, help did not always come. When you were confused, guidance was scarce. This absence was not neglect, it was training. God was teaching you to listen inwardly, to trust discernment over noise, to develop a relationship with truth that does not depend on validation. That is why chosen ones often struggle with asking for help. You learned, unconsciously, that survival depended on your own strength. But as you mature, another lesson emerges: strength does not mean isolation forever. It means knowing when to stand alone, and when to allow support without losing yourself. There is also a pattern many chosen ones recognize with painful clarity: you attract wounded people. People see safety in you. They feel understood, held, seen. But sometimes, they also drain you, cross boundaries, or leave once they have healed. This is not because you are meant to be used. It is because your presence carries healing energy. But one of the final lessons for a chosen one is learning discernment, understanding who deserves access to your heart and who only deserves compassion from a distance. God never intended you to save everyone. You may also realize that your silence has often been misunderstood. People assumed you were weak, indifferent, or unaware. In truth, you were observing, processing, choosing peace over reaction. Chosen ones do not speak impulsively, they speak intentionally. Your quiet is not emptiness, it is restraint. And yet, there will come a time when silence is no longer required. When your voice, your truth, your boundaries must be spoken clearly. Many chosen ones fear this moment because it means disappointing people, breaking old patterns, and stepping out of familiar roles. But growth demands honesty, even when it disrupts comfort. As your awareness expands, your tolerance for certain environments shrinks. You may find yourself unable to engage in shallow conversations, meaningless conflict, or performative relationships. This does not make you arrogant. It means your soul is prioritizing substance over stimulation. This shift can feel lonely. You may grieve the version of life you once tried to want. The friendships that no longer resonate. The dreams that no longer fit. Grief is part of alignment. Let it pass through you without judgment. Chosen ones often walk a paradoxical path, deeply compassionate, yet increasingly selective. Open-hearted, yet fiercely protective of their energy. Willing to love, but unwilling to abandon themselves again. Another truth few speak about is how often chosen ones experience spiritual fatigue. Not because faith is gone, but because responsibility has been heavy for too long. Carrying awareness is exhausting. Seeing patterns others deny is tiring. Holding hope in dark spaces requires courage. If you have ever felt tired of being the one who understands, know that rest is not failure. Withdrawal is not betrayal. Even light needs darkness to renew itself. God does not expect constant output from His chosen. He expects authenticity. There will be moments when you question your worth, not because you lack value, but because you have outgrown the metrics you were taught to measure yourself by. External success may come later, in unexpected forms. Internal peace, however, is the true milestone. When chosen ones finally stop trying to prove themselves, life shifts. Doors open without force, connections form without chasing, purpose unfolds without pressure. This is not coincidence. It is alignment responding to surrender. You may also notice an increased sensitivity to truth as you mature. You cannot pretend anymore. You cannot lie to yourself for comfort. You cannot participate in illusions just to belong. This honesty can feel isolating, but it is also liberating. Freedom begins when self-betrayal ends. As you step further into your path, your intuition becomes sharper. Decisions feel less logical and more certain. You may not always have evidence, but you have clarity. Trust this. God often speaks to His chosen not through noise, but through knowing. And yes, doubt will still appear. Chosen ones are not immune to fear. The difference is that fear no longer leads. It follows. There is a quiet moment every chosen one reaches, a moment where survival is no longer the primary goal. Meaning is, contribution is, alignment is. At that point, life becomes less about escaping pain and more about honoring truth. You were never meant to be small. You were meant to be steady. To carry light without spectacle. To lead without domination. To love without losing yourself. Your journey has not been delayed. It has been deepened. And one day, you will look back, not with bitterness, but with understanding, and realize that everything you endured was shaping you into someone who could hold both compassion and clarity at the same time. That is the mark of the chosen. Not perfection, not privilege, but purpose, earned through endurance. There is a season that arrives quietly in the life of every chosen one, a season where you stop fighting who you are. You no longer chase belonging at the cost of your integrity. You no longer explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You no longer negotiate with environments that demand your silence in exchange for acceptance. This season does not announce itself loudly, but when it comes, everything inside you exhales. Before this shift, you likely spent years shrinking your truth. You softened your voice. You hid your intensity. You downplayed your insight, not because you were dishonest, but because you learned early that your depth made others uncomfortable. Chosen ones often learn adaptation before authenticity. Survival comes first. Expression comes later, but adaptation has an expiration date. Eventually, the soul grows tired of being edited. When this happens, a strange thing occurs. You stop needing to be understood by everyone. Understanding yourself becomes enough. This is not indifference, it is sovereignty. You realize that not everyone has the capacity to meet you where you stand, and that is no longer a personal failure. This internal shift changes the way you relate to the world. You listen more than you speak, but when you do speak, your words carry weight. You move slower, but with intention. You choose peace, not because you fear conflict, but because you respect your energy too much to waste it. One of the most misunderstood aspects of being chosen is how much restraint it requires. People assume power looks like dominance or visibility. In reality, true power is knowing you could respond, and choosing not to. Knowing you could retaliate, and choosing grace. Knowing you could expose, but choosing wisdom. Chosen ones are often tested in moments where reaction would be justified. These moments are not traps, they are thresholds. Each time, you choose alignment over impulse, something within you strengthens. You may have noticed that your emotional responses have evolved. What once triggered you deeply now barely moves you. Not because you are numb, but because you are grounded. Healing does not make you passive, it makes you discerning. You no longer give your nervous system to chaos. This is one of the clearest signs of spiritual maturity. As you stabilize internally, the external world begins to rearrange itself. Some people drift away naturally. Others attempt to provoke reactions they can no longer access. This can feel confusing at first. But understand this: when you stop feeding old dynamics, they starve. Chosen ones are not meant to repeat cycles. They are meant to end them. Ending cycles, however, often requires grief. You grieve versions of yourself who tolerated less. You grieve relationships that were built on who you used to be. You grieve timelines that no longer exist. Allow this grief. It is not weakness, it is integration. Another quiet truth emerges in this season: you stop romanticizing suffering. For a long time, pain felt like proof of purpose. Endurance felt like identity. But God does not require perpetual struggle from His chosen. At some point, the lesson shifts from surviving storms to learning how to rest in calm. Peace can feel unfamiliar at first. Without chaos, the nervous system searches for threat. Chosen ones must relearn safety. They must allow ease without guilt. This is a deeper form of healing than endurance ever was. You may also experience a change in how you relate to time. You no longer rush, urgency fades. You understand that what is meant for you does not require force. Patience becomes less about waiting and more about trusting. This trust does not make you passive. It makes you precise. When you act from clarity rather than desperation. When you choose from alignment rather than fear of loss. This is when life begins to respond differently to you, not because you are controlling it, but because you are cooperating with it. There is also a noticeable shift in your standards. Not just for others, but for yourself. You no longer abandon your values for convenience. You no longer justify what drains you. You no longer entertain narratives that diminish your worth. This self-respect is not arrogance. It is remembrance. You remember who you are beneath conditioning, beneath trauma, beneath expectation. And once you remember, forgetting becomes impossible. As this remembrance deepens, your intuition grows quieter, but stronger. It no longer shouts, it simply knows. You trust it without needing to explain yourself. Decisions become cleaner. Regret becomes rarer. And still, humility remains. Chosen ones do not seek superiority. They seek alignment. They understand that their path is not better, just different. This humility keeps the heart open even as the boundaries become firm. You may also notice an increase in synchronicities. Encounters feel timed. Opportunities arrive unexpectedly. Insights land precisely when needed. These are not rewards. They are confirmations that you are moving in rhythm with something larger than yourself. Yet even here, discipline remains essential. Chosen ones are not exempt from responsibility. Awareness without action becomes stagnation. Insight without embodiment becomes illusion. What you know must be lived. Living your truth does not always mean speaking it publicly. Sometimes it means choosing differently in private. Honoring your energy. Protecting your peace. Showing up consistently, even when no one is watching. This quiet integrity is what sustains the chosen over time. Eventually, you stop seeking signs. Life itself becomes the sign. You trust your path, without needing constant reassurance. You understand that doubt is part of faith, not its opposite. You were never meant to be flawless. You were meant to be faithful, to your truth, your values, your growth. And perhaps the most grounding realization of all arrives gently: you do not need to carry the world alone anymore. You are allowed to be supported. You are allowed to receive. You are allowed to experience joy without earning it through suffering. God does not measure worth through pain endured, but through truth embodied. You have already done the hardest part. You stayed, you grew, you remembered, and from this place, everything you build will be rooted, not in survival, but in purpose that finally feels like home.